Every morning, a quiet boy would sit alone at a corner cafe. He never ordered, never spoke, just watched. The waitress noticed. She started bringing him soup, a sandwich, a smile. No questions, no charge, just kindness. Weeks passed. Then one morning, 4 black SUVs pulled up to her diner. What happened next changed her life and revealed the secret the boy had been hiding all along. On the outskirts of a sleepy highway in the heart of the Southwest stood a small, unassuming cafe, even by local standards. It was a relic of bygone days, a weathered building with peeling turquoise paint, a creaky sign swinging gently in the desert wind, and a handful of red vinyl chairs lined around mismatched wooden tables. Inside, the air shimmered with the mingled scents of fresh coffee, aged pastries, and the lingering warmth of countless conversations. This was Emma's world, a humble waitstaff role in a place where time moved a little slower, and every face told a story. Every day, Emma, a gentle, hard-working woman with kind eyes and a quiet determination, rose before dawn to prepare for the day's service. As she swept the worn linoleum floor, arranged freshly laundered tablecloths, and brewed the day's first pot of coffee, she always looked forward to the steady hum of customers who found solace in the cafe. Yet amid the familiar chatter and clatter, one detail soon began to catch her eye. A little boy, slight as a wisp of desert wind, who would enter the cafe almost without a sound. Dressed in tattered, oversized clothes and with eyes downcast, he slipped quietly in each morning. He never sat at the counter like the regulars, nor did he ever join the lively groups gathered over steaming mugs. Instead, he would choose a secluded corner by a fogged-up window, sliding into a creaky chair with a sort of desperate reserve, and he would sit there silently. Often, Emma would catch him glancing at the menu board, his gaze lingering on the colorful sketches of dishes he never ordered. It wasn't that he disliked the food. Rather, something in his quiet demeanor spoke of a longing, an unspoken need that went far beyond hunger or a simple desire for sustenance. Day after day, as the morning light filtered through the dusty windows and the aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the room, Emma's gentle curiosity turned to quiet concern. She noticed how the boy would linger long after most of the patrons had come and gone, barely interacting with anyone, his eyes fixed on the communal world around him without truly joining it. When asked by a friendly colleague if he might be waiting for someone, Emma only received a shy, downward glance in return. There was something solemn about his silent presence, a story he carried on his small shoulders, hidden behind timid eyes. One breezy afternoon, as the steady rhythm of clinking silverware and murmured order melodies played out across the cafe, Emma reached a tipping point in her quiet concern. Alone behind the counter for a lull in the rush of customers, she recalled a memory from her own childhood, a time when a small act of kindness had changed her day completely. With this gentle spark in her heart, she decided to act. Without hesitating or prying, she prepared a steaming bowl of soup, a hearty, homemade broth with tender pieces of chicken, soft vegetables, and a warmth that promised comfort. She carefully arranged a modest plate and, cradling it in gloved hands, she approached the boy's usual corner table. The cafe was quiet enough that her footsteps seemed to echo, yet when Emma placed the bowl before him, the world around her softened. For a few heartbeats, the ordinary bustle paused. The only sound was the soft clink of porcelain against the formica table, as if time itself were holding its breath to see what would happen next. The boy looked up, startled, perhaps uncertain, his dark eyes meeting hers briefly. In that fleeting, fragile moment, their silent worlds connected. With a whisper so gentle it might have been mistaken for the rustle of a fallen leaf, the boy's lips formed a barely audible thank you. It was a word that radiated a profound mixture of gratitude and something else unspoken, a promise that his heart had been touched, even if just for a moment. Emma smiled, a warm, radiant smile that pushed away the chill of the world beyond the cafe's doors. She knew that in offering the soup without expecting anything in return, without questioning his story or demanding an explanation, she had done something that transcended the ordinary exchange of money for food. In that simple, selfless act, she had extended the gift of dignity and comfort to a lonely soul. As the boy resumed his silent vigil and Emma returned to her work, whispers of something unspoken seemed to weave themselves into the cafe's atmosphere. Regulars exchanged glances, some raising eyebrows in quiet disbelief when they noticed Emma's gentle defiance of the status quo. A candid post by one of the few patrons, an offhand photograph snapped on a rainy afternoon, would later spark murmurs on social media with the caption, "Strangers helping strangers. Some people just can't see each other, but sometimes that's exactly what makes all the difference." Although many dismissed it with cynical indifference, that simple act of kindness, captured in a single frozen moment, began to ripple through the community, unseen yet deeply felt. In the stillness of the late afternoon, as the desert sun dipped low and painted the sky with hues of gold and rose, Emma lingered by the window, watching the boy as he slowly pushed his food aside and retreated into the corner once more. Her heart, already full from countless small miracles witnessed daily, braced for whatever may come next. For Emma knew, in the quiet rhythm of everyday life, that even the smallest gestures, a bowl of warm soup offered without a word of expectation, had the incredible power to change lives, one silent soul at a time. Each new day at the cafe, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Emma would arrive with a quiet determination that belied the ordinary routine of serving breakfast and coffee. Every morning, as she polished the cafe's counter and arranged fresh bouquets on each table, her thoughts would drift to that silent, slender boy who always took the same secluded seat by the window. His presence had soon become an unspoken counterpoint to the clatter of coffee cups and the murmur of familiar greetings, a shadow of solitude amid everyday life. At precisely 8:15 every morning, when the cafe was just beginning to fill with its usual crowd, Emma would discreetly prepare a steaming bowl of hearty soup. It was a simple recipe, a delicate blend of rich broth, tender vegetables, and a few generous morsels of shredded chicken, cooked with care and a quiet hope of bringing comfort to someone whose sorrow could not be measured in words. With the bowl carefully wrapped in a clean cloth, she would walk over to the corner table where the boy sat, his eyes downcast and fixed on the menu but never lifting to meet hers. Without ever asking a question about his silent demeanor, she'd softly place the bowl in front of him. On that first day when she offered the soup, the boy's barely perceptible "thank you" had resonated with Emma far beyond the boundaries of mere courtesy. In the days that followed, her gesture became a quiet ritual. Every morning, no matter how busy the cafe became, Emma always ensured that a bowl of soup found its way to that table. The young visitor rarely, if ever, left his seat. His eyes remained fixed on the chipped pattern table, and he never tried to speak or return her smile beyond a fleeting nod. There were no elaborate exchanges, just the consistent, unvoiced acknowledgement that she was there and that someone cared. Not everyone, however, appreciated this small act of kindness. The other cafe staff, busy with their roles or caught up in the pragmatic concerns of running a modest business, often exchanged sarcastic glances or whispered remarks behind Emma's back. "Why waste a bowl of soup on a kid who isn't even paying?" one of the cashiers muttered one morning, his tone edged with irritation. The cafe's owner, a gruff man with little patience for charity that impacted his bottom line, wasn't any more sympathetic. "Emma, you're spending resources on someone who's not even a customer," he barked during a quiet lull in the afternoon bustle. His words, harsh and pragmatic, cut through the gentle atmosphere, but Emma's response was calm and unwavering, a tender smile that suggested she already knew the value of simply being kind. Despite the disapproval and occasional mockery, Emma continued her small, daily mission. In the back of her mind, she recalled moments from her own childhood, times when a kind gesture had quietly altered the course of a day filled with loneliness or despair. It was as if the act of giving, so simple and yet so potent, had the power to make a difference, even if it went unnoticed by the majority. And so, every day for weeks, without fanfare or complaint, Emma persisted in serving that bowl of soup, hoping that it might momentarily fill the void in the boy's silent world. Meanwhile, the little boy continued his peculiar routine without interruption. When asked by a curious patron or a fellow employee about his story, he would simply shrug, his eyes dropping once more to the table as though the question itself were an intrusion into a private corner of his heart. He neither offered his name nor revealed any hint of a backstory. He carried no phone, no wallet, nothing that might anchor him to a life known to others. His existence had become a quiet mystery, a gentle reminder that sometimes sadness does not need to be loudly proclaimed to be deeply felt. Word of Emma's daily act of kindness began to ripple through the community, reaching ears that paid too little attention to the small wonders of everyday life. An offhand comment on social media by a regular customer eventually caught fire online. A photo of the silent boy at his usual spot, captioned with a curt, "Strangers' problems are not our concern," turned unexpectedly viral. The image, taken without malice by a bystander who didn't understand the boy's quiet world, soon spurred heated debates in comment threads. Yet, paradoxically, it was this digital chatter that brought the boy into sharper focus. Within the swirl of opinions, however negative, someone recognized the familiar look on his face. A look of deep, enduring loneliness. And that same message unwittingly became the catalyst for change. In the weeks that followed the viral post, the initial echo of derision gradually transformed into a murmur of concern. It appeared that even the youngest souls, those who had the uneasy courage to silently observe every day, could benefit immensely from the simplest forms of kindness. Emma's actions, which had once been dismissed by some as an unnecessary charity, now held a subtle power, reaffirming that a solitary bowl of soup delivered with genuine heart was indeed a quiet revolution in its own right. Day by day, as the seasons began to hint at change, the routine in the cafe remained steadfast. The boy continued to appear, always silently, almost exactly on time each morning. And Emma, with each bowl of soup, not only filled his stomach but also nurtured an invisible spark within him. A spark of hope, of belonging, of the possibility that someone cared enough to look beyond outward appearances. Even behind the disapproving eyes of the skeptics, Emma knew that her small gesture was a seed, one that might one day grow into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. One chilly morning, as the sun struggled to pierce through a thick curtain of clouds over the desert sky, Emma arrived at the cafe, blinking sleep from her tired eyes as she prepared for another busy day. Yet as she stepped behind the counter and surveyed the familiar scene, an unsettling emptiness began to seep into the edges of her routine. Her heart sank when she realized that the quiet, slender boy, her silent, steadfast visitor, was nowhere to be seen. For the past 3 mornings in a row, his chair by the window had remained conspicuously empty. At first, Emma tried to dismiss it as a minor hiccup. Perhaps he was running late, or perhaps the chill in the air had deterred him from venturing out. Still, as the day wore on, a persistent worry gnawed at her. Every silent tick of the cafe's old clock, every empty seat that should have been filled by the boy's gentle presence, echoed in her mind with an inexplicable urgency. The other staff members exchanged puzzled glances, and even regular patrons noted the absence with quiet concern. The usually lively murmur of the cafe had acquired a tinge of melancholy, as if it too sensed that something was amiss. During her shift, Emma remained distracted by the empty chair, frequently glancing toward the window as if expecting to catch a glimpse of his small figure rounding the corner. With each passing hour, her worry grew heavier. The boy had never once complained or drawn attention when he came. He had simply appeared day after day, silently accepting the small kindness of a bowl of soup. Now, his disappearance created a void that was impossible to ignore. At closing time, after wiping down the counter and tidying the chairs, Emma sat alone for a moment in the quiet of the slowly emptying cafe. The rhythmic hum of the old refrigerator and the soft clink of a coffee cup set an almost unbearable silence against the backdrop of her anxious thoughts. She thought about the little boy, how he had quietly sat in that secluded corner, how he had only murmured a tentative thank you that brightened her weary heart, and wondered what had happened to make him vanish without explanation. Every fiber of her being urged her to check the neighborhood. She even considered calling social services. Yet she hesitated. Part of her feared that if she intervened too abruptly, she might inadvertently disrupt something fragile in his life. A delicate web of circumstances he might have chosen to hide from a world that could not understand him. Instead, Emma resolved to wait one more day, clinging to the hope that he would return as he always had. That very night, long after the last of the customers had left and the neon sign outside hummed its quiet farewell. Emma closed up the cafe and began her slow walk home under a sky twisted with deep purples and blues. The world felt different now, heavier somehow, as though the air itself remembered the boy's gentle presence and mourned his sudden absence. Her thoughts swirled. Had something happened to him? Could he be in danger? Was he simply too overwhelmed by his own silent struggles to come back? As Emma reached the parking lot and paused to unlock her car, she noticed a small folded piece of paper tucked gently beneath the windshield wiper. It hadn't been there when she had arrived earlier that day. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, turning it over carefully in the dim glow of a street lamp. In neat, looping handwriting she could not immediately place, the note read simply, "You did more than you know." The message, a quiet, enigmatic commendation, sent a resonant shiver through her. It was as if the note acknowledged her simple act of kindness with a hint of hidden meaning. Emma's eyes widened as she recalled subtle details. The boy's unexpressed gratitude, the way his eyes seemed to hold depths of sorrow and resilience, and the quiet determination behind his very silence. The note, unsigned and almost ghost-like in its simplicity, carried both comfort and mystery. That same night, unable to shake the weight of her mounting concern and the unexpected note, Emma sat in her small living room, the note spread out on the coffee table before her. She pored over it repeatedly, wondering if it held the key to understanding the boy's disappearance. With a heavy heart, she dialed the number of a local community liaison, someone who might know if the authorities had received any reports regarding missing children, or if anything unusual had been observed in the neighborhood. Yet, the phone call ended with little more than vague assurances that there were no leads and that the case would be closed off as temporary no-shows. Even as Emma's mind churned with possibilities, a quiet determination began to take root. There was something in those 4 simple words, a message that insisted she had made a difference, however small, that urged her not to give up hope. The note affirmed that her kindness, though seemingly trivial in the vast tapestry of life, had sparked a light in someone who desperately needed it. Deep down, Emma believed that the boy's current absence was not a final farewell but a pause, a mystery that even as she waited with an aching heart, promised to reveal itself in time. That night, Emma lay awake in bed, her thoughts a whirlwind of worry and resolve. The silent void left by the boy's absence mingled with the unsettling reassurance of the note. In the quiet dark, the note's message echoed repeatedly, urging her to continue believing in small acts of goodness, even when the world seemed indifferent. Though the boy was gone for now, Emma held on to the hope that her daily kindness had left an indelible mark on his life, a mark that would eventually guide him back into the light, just as it had transformed her own understanding of what it meant to care for another soul. That Wednesday morning, a chill hung in the air, a contrast to the usual warmth of the desert dawn, and as the early light broke over the horizon, an unusual procession of vehicles rolled silently toward the cafe. Emma was restocking the condiment station when the low, deliberate hum of engines reached her ears. Peering out the front window, she beheld 4 sleek, black SUVs pulling slowly into the parking lot. Their polished exteriors caught the sunrise in sharp reflections, and the tinted windows gave nothing away about the occupants within. The arrival of these vehicles was like a scene from a film. The normally familiar setting of the roadside cafe was transformed in minutes into a stage for something extraordinary. As the SUVs lined up neatly along the curb, an almost tangible hush fell over the patrons inside. Conversations dwindled to a quiet murmur. Coffee cups paused mid-lift. Even the clatter of dishes and routine background music seemed to be swallowed by an expectant silence. One by one, sharply dressed men in dark suits stepped out, their movements precise and measured, as if each step had been rehearsed countless times. Their faces remained hidden behind dark sunglasses that, despite the bright morning, lent them an air of mystery and authority. The well-practiced formality with which they moved suggested that they were not ordinary visitors. They were emissaries with a singular, important purpose. Without fanfare, their eyes swept over the cafe until they fixated on Emma, who had continued her task unaware until now. With the quiet confidence of seasoned professionals, one of the agents, taller than the rest with an assured yet gentle tone, stepped forward. He approached Emma near the register, and as he spoke, every word seemed to ripple through the still air with surprising warmth. "Madam, you have just changed not only one child's life, but an entire system," he declared, his voice steady and imbued with a profound urgency. The statement hung there, punctuating the silence like a resonant bell. In that moment, the meaning of his words slowly began to crystallize. Emma's daily ritual of serving a warm bowl of soup for the quiet, lonely boy, an act of kindness that she had performed without ever expecting recognition, had inadvertently become the catalyst for something much larger. The visitor's measured tone revealed that this was no mere courtesy. It was an acknowledgement that her simple compassion had set off a chain of events far beyond her own small world. Inside the cafe, every eye turned toward Emma as the agent spoke. The owner, usually so critical of any expenditure that did not promise immediate profit, now wore an expression that mingled astonishment with concern. Regular customers exchanged uneasy glances, some whispering in disbelief while others sat in silent reverence. The transformation in atmosphere was palpable. In the wake of that single sentence, the mundane surroundings of the cafe seemed to shimmer with possibilities, as though the very air had been rearranged by the force of genuine human kindness. The group of agents did not linger long in the public space. One of them, a well-spoken man in a perfectly tailored suit, offered Emma a discreet invitation. "We need to speak with you privately," he said, his tone both respectful and insistent. With no further explanation, and under the watchful eyes of every patron in the building, Emma was gently ushered toward the exit. Outside, stationed neatly near the arrival vehicles, the agents formed a semicircle, their demeanor professional yet empathetic. In the bright morning light, away from the curious stares of the cafe's interior, the conversation resumed in earnest. The lead agent explained that a viral post, one that had circulated rapidly through social media, had captured a candid photo of the silent boy seated in his usual corner, tagged with a disparaging caption that read, "Strangers' children aren't our problem." While many had reacted with indifference or cynical humor, others recognized in that post a call for attention to something deeper, a plea for help that had reached the right ears. It turned out that behind that image lay a story too significant to ignore. The boy was not merely a transient visitor, nor was he an ordinary child without a past. He was, in fact, the son of an undercover informant whose existence was shrouded in danger, his silence a protective mechanism born of necessity. The agents revealed that their investigation had uncovered that the boy's plight was connected to a high-stakes case involving corruption and abuse within governmental circles. His secretive presence in the cafe had inadvertently provided a safe haven, a quiet space where he could momentarily reclaim a semblance of normalcy in the midst of a tumultuous life. Emma's unwavering act of compassion, serving him food day after day without judgment, had ensured that he maintained a thread of stability, inadvertently safeguarding his fragile mental state through a prolonged crisis. As the agents gently probed for further details, inquiring about the boy's mannerisms, the note she had found on that uncertain day, and any other glimpses of his past, Emma recounted her simple observations. She spoke with clarity about the quiet humility in his eyes, his steadfast routine, and the way he would merely nod in silent gratitude when she placed a bowl of soup before him. She confessed that, though he never spoke, his presence resonated with a deep sadness that moved her to act. The agents listened intently, their expressions softening as they pieced together the narrative that had already taken years to form beneath layers of silence. Within the circle of agents, murmurs of acknowledgement passed quietly. One of them remarked, "Her kindness has, directly or indirectly, given us the key to this case." For the first time in a long while, Emma felt that her small, everyday gestures, often dismissed as trivial by a harsh world, were recognized as the spark that could ignite a profound change. The revelation was bittersweet. She had never sought accolades, only the simple human connection that comes from caring for another soul. Yet here she stood, at the crossroads of personal kindness and systemic transformation. After a measured pause, the lead agent gently concluded, "Your actions have set in motion a series of events that will now help protect other vulnerable lives." Your compassion has been pivotal in proving that even the smallest acts of goodness are never wasted." With that, he extended an invitation for her to share more about her experiences, suggesting that she might even become an integral part of a new initiative designed to support victims of systemic abuse. His words rang as a promise that Emma's everyday acts of kindness had far-reaching, transformative power. Trembling with both humility and astonishment, Emma nodded slowly. In that moment, standing outside her cherished cafe with the desert sun rising overhead, she finally understood that her silent compassion was far more potent than she had ever imagined. It wasn't merely about nourishing a hungry child. It was about healing broken lives and, in doing so, altering the very fabric of a system in dire need of change. In the hushed aftermath of the SUV's arrival, under the pale light of an early afternoon, one of the agents, quiet yet resolute, began to reveal details that would change everything Emma thought she knew about the silent boy. The agent, whose name was later confirmed as Agent Lawson, leaned in close as he spoke in a measured tone, one that carried the weight of years of careful investigation and guarded secrets. "Madam Emma," he began, his voice low and earnest, "the little boy you have been caring for isn't simply a stray child in need. He is, in fact, the son of an undercover informant who was embedded in a high-level investigation into corruption and abuse within governmental corridors. His life had been weaponized by those who work in the shadows, as did the case against those guilty of abuses of power." Emma's eyes widened as she listened intently, the steady hum of the cafe outside momentarily forgotten. Agent Lawson continued, "We learned that his mother, the informant, sacrificed everything to expose crimes that were being concealed by powerful figures. When the operation took a tragic turn, she lost her life. Her courage, however, saved her son. In the chaos that followed, his father was forced to go underground to provide him with the protection of anonymity for his very survival." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle in. The revelation was both heartbreaking and empowering. Suddenly, years of silent concern seemed to have a noble, if painful, explanation. "The boy you have been visiting every day was placed in a discreet witness protection program long before you began your daily act of kindness," Agent Lawson explained. "But because of the highly sensitive nature of his mother's testimony and the danger that continued to linger, any potential exposure could have undone everything. That is why, until recently, all his appearances were meant to be as unassuming as possible. A delicate balance between his need for normalcy and the imperative of remaining unseen." As Emma absorbed the news, she recalled the boy's vacant eyes and the fragile manner in which he accepted each bowl of soup. She understood now that his quiet presence was not born of indifference. It was a survival strategy, a way to avoid drawing attention to himself. His silence, she realized, was also a shield, one that helped him keep the chaotic memories of a tragic past at bay. "Your kindness," Agent Lawson said softly, "provided him with the only stable human connection he had during those turbulent years. When you left your heart on the counter each morning with that bowl of soup, you gave him not just nourishment for his body, but something far more essential, a sense of normalcy and hope amid a life forced into hiding." He reached into a slim envelope and pulled out a faded ID card, embossed with a government seal that he discreetly passed into Emma's hands. "This," he explained, "is an official document that confirms his identity and his connection to the informant case. We have reopened the investigation, and every small clue matters." You see, the viral post, though initially intended as a dismissive remark, became an unintended spark. It brought to light subtle inconsistencies in his story that broadened our focus, ultimately leading us to him. While many would have simply ignored it, somebody recognized in that image the unmistakable eyes of a protected witness. Listening intently, Emma felt a swell of bittersweet pride. Over the countless days when colleagues had sneered and the owner had grumbled about her waste of resources, she had quietly persisted. Her small act of compassion had provided this child a slice of security amidst a storm of uncertainty. In the midst of systemic corruption and the heavy machinery of covert operations, her genuine human kindness had offered him an anchor, a safe haven that, unbeknownst to him, was shaping the course of an investigation that threatened to dismantle a whole network of abuse. Agent Lawson continued with measured clarity. We believe that your intervention, however modest it may have seemed, helped keep his fragile mind intact. The nourishment you provided daily enabled him to maintain a sense of identity and stability, which ultimately allowed him to navigate the dangers of his hidden life. In our line of work, sometimes it takes the simplest act, a shared meal, a kind gesture, to tip the scales in favor of the truth. Your compassion has become a pivotal piece of evidence for us. As his words sank in, the reality of the situation unfolded before Emma with both sorrow and awe. The quiet boy, once a mysterious, nearly invisible figure haunted by loneliness, was not a random casualty or an unclaimed orphan. Instead, he was the child of someone who had risked everything to shine light on corruption. A beacon in the darkness whose very existence was cloaked in sacrifice and the pursuit of justice. And it was Emma's everyday humanity, rendered in her unwavering care, that had offered him the chance to remain whole, even when the forces around him sought to break him. In that moment, among the solemn faces of the agents and the silent reverence of the cafe's patrons who had been ushered outside, Emma felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. There was sorrow for the loss of the courageous informant, gratitude that her modest acts had made a difference, and a fierce resolve to continue her kindness, knowing that sometimes the simplest acts can ripple out to change lives and systems in ways one could never imagine. The air in the cafe had barely settled after the tense revelations of the previous afternoon when a new chapter in Emma's story began to unfold. In the soft hum of breaking dawn, Agent Lawson and another senior agent reappeared near the entrance, their expressions solemn but imbued with purpose. They had returned with a fresh proposal, a way to harness and honor the quiet compassion that had already transformed the life of one vulnerable child, and by extension, the integrity of an entire system. As a small crowd of regulars and newfound onlookers gathered outside the cafe, many clutching smartphones in anticipation, the lead agent, in a calm yet persuasive tone, addressed Emma directly. Madam Emma, your selfless act of kindness has now reached beyond these walls, he began. Your daily service of a bowl of soup for a silent child has given us a pivotal key to unlock a complicated case, one that has now led to the reopening of investigations into systemic corruption and abuse. More than that, it has shown us that everyday compassion can be the spark that saves lives and reforms institutions. His words hung in the cool morning air as he continued. We recognize that your actions, though modest and done without hope of reward, have not only provided comfort to a boy living under extraordinary circumstances but also preserved his fragile psyche during turbulent times. In light of this, our agency is launching a new initiative aimed at protecting vulnerable citizens and supporting those who, through small, courageous gestures, help uphold the truth. We would like to extend an invitation for you to join this program. You have an opportunity to work with us as a community liaison, a role that will involve coordinating support for abuse victims, collaborating with law enforcement and social service agencies, and sharing your story to inspire systemic change. Inside the cafe, the atmosphere turned electric. Normal chatter hushed as patrons and employees alike stopped to listen. Even the gruff cafe owner, who had long been skeptical of what he deemed charity, with no tangible return, now wore an expression of disbelief and reluctant awe. Cameras and mobile phones hummed softly as several customers began recording the proceedings, their voices intermingling into a low murmur of unexpected support and admiration. Emma, taken aback by the sudden flurry of formal attention, felt her heart flutter in a mixture of disbelief and quiet pride. She'd never sought fame or recognition. Her actions stemmed from an innate desire to do what felt inherently humane. Yet, the sincerity in the agent's tone and the gravity of his message stirred something deep within her. The agent continued, "We believe that your consistent, compassionate care not only helped keep the child's identity and well-being intact but also provided a crucial break in our investigation. That same kindness, and the stability it provided, enabled law enforcement to review overlooked details, ultimately confirming the boy's true identity and linking him more clearly to an ongoing high-risk witness protection case." A murmur of understanding rippled among the crowd as the reality of the revelation sank in. The boy, whose silent presence had once been shrouded in anonymity and misunderstood indifference, now emerged as a child whose very survival depended on unwavering human compassion. Emma's small act had, inadvertently, become a linchpin in a larger narrative involving whistleblower victims, covert operations, and the precarious battle against systemic manipulation. The agent's proposal was not merely a reward. It was an invitation to become part of a network of everyday heroes, whose courage lay in helping others without expecting anything in return. "Madam," the agent added, his voice firm yet gentle, "we have arranged for you to receive training in community outreach and witness support. Moreover, you will be given a position on their new social support team. This role will empower you to assist others who find themselves in similarly dire circumstances, and your story will serve as a beacon of hope. In the coming days, you will receive a formal offer outlining benefits, confidentiality protocols, and future opportunities to expand this program. We believe your contributions have the power to transform lives on a much larger scale." As the agent spoke, the cafe owner's face turned pale as he listened. For years he had dismissed or even begrudged Emma's acts of kindness as unnecessary expenditures of his limited resources. Now, faced with the tangible impact of her compassion and its ripple effect on a critical investigation, he could only watch in stunned silence. Meanwhile, many patrons recorded each word, sensing that an extraordinary moment had arrived. One that blurred the boundaries between a modest act of goodwill and a seismic shift in the way society would address vulnerability and injustice. Emma's hands trembled ever so slightly, but her eyes remained resolute. She thought of the lonely, silent boy whose daily meals had been a quiet testament to her humanity. In that small, unassuming act lay the essence of what made life meaningful, a willingness to reach out to another human being, regardless of circumstance. Though overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment, she managed a soft reply. I never did it for recognition. I just wanted to help." The agent nodded gently, and with a reassuring smile, he said, "And that is exactly why we need you. Your kindness is the truth that can change lives." Within minutes, news crews arrived, and reporters began interviewing the agents and even catching glimpses of Emma's humble smile. The cafe, once known only to locals, began to hum with a newfound energy as the community realized the magnitude of what had occurred in their midst. Emma's story was now on its way to national headlines, a narrative about one woman whose simple compassion had set off a chain of events that could change the way we protect the vulnerable. That day marked not only a turning point for the child whose life had been quietly salvaged but also for Emma herself. A quiet hero recognized for her unassuming acts of love that had so dramatically altered the course of lives, and indeed, the system itself. A full year had passed since that unforgettable day when the 4 black SUVs had rolled into the cafe, turning Emma's quiet world upside down. In that transformative moment, Emma's life had expanded beyond her modest role as a waitress in a roadside cafe. Inspired by the revelations that her simple act of kindness had sparked, a truth that had not only given comfort to a secret, vulnerable child, but had also helped break open a larger system of corruption, Emma had embraced a new calling. Today, she found herself at the heart of a charitable support center, a place dedicated to helping those who had been touched by abuse, neglect, and the harsh realities of life. The center, aptly named Angel's Haven, had become a beacon of hope for countless individuals, and Emma was one of its most cherished figures. Every morning at Angel's Haven, Emma dedicated herself to creating an environment that nurtured healing, understanding, and unconditional care. She organized group sessions for survivors of domestic violence, coordinated community outreach initiatives, and even volunteered to mentor at-risk youth. The memory of the silent boy, the child with eyes that held both sorrow and resilience, had become the driving force behind her commitment. In every small gesture, every encouraging word she shared, Emma carried with her the quiet knowledge that the simplest of acts, a caring word, a warm meal, a patient smile, could rebuild lives and mend broken souls. One crisp autumn day, as amber leaves danced gently across the center's courtyard, Emma settled into a quiet corner of a sunlit room after an exhausting morning of counseling and organizing community outreach events. The gentle murmur of supportive voices and the soft strains of a piano played in the background provided a soothing counterpoint to her busy day. Amid the routine of paperwork and heartfelt testimonials from those she had helped, a small envelope caught her eye. It had no return address, and its paper was delicately worn, as if it had traveled a long, poignant journey before arriving at her hands. With a mixture of trepidation and hopeful curiosity, Emma carefully opened the envelope. Inside, nestled on a crisp sheet of stationery, was a drawing, a piece of art rendered in the innocent, unsteady hand of a child. The drawing was imbued with a tender simplicity. A small, smiling boy stood with one hand extended, gently holding the hand of a woman whose kindly eyes shone with warmth. Around the image, in neat, looping letters, were the words, "You are my angel." For a moment, time seemed to suspend in the quiet of her office. Emma's heart swelled with a wave of emotions. Wonder, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of connection that spanned time and distance. Though she had not seen the boy since the days when he would silently sit in the corner of her cafe, the drawing felt as if it carried a part of him, a resounding confirmation that her kindness had not been lost, but had instead become a lifeline for someone who had needed it more than anyone else could know. Emma's eyes glistened as she traced the crayon lines, noticing every careful detail. How the child's hand clutched hers, how their figures seemed to merge in a warm, protective embrace. It was as if the drawing spoke directly to her soul, affirming that even the smallest gestures could ripple outward into lives she would never fully see. In that tender moment, she recalled the countless mornings she had served a bowl of soup with no expectation of reward, the silent nods of gratitude, and the quiet resilience in the boy's gaze that had renewed her own belief in humanity. The drawing now affirmed that hope, both a tribute to his survival and an acknowledgement of her part in protecting him. Soon after, the center's telephone began to ring messages of thanks, of lives changed, and of progress in reopened investigations began pouring in from law enforcement, journalists, and community leaders who had learned of the case through Emma's story. The previously anonymous viral social media post, once dismissed by many as nothing more than an expression of apathy, had grown into a movement. Individuals from all walks of life began sharing stories of unnoticed kindnesses, united by a common belief that every compassionate act had the power to transform the world. Emma's once quiet gesture had become a rallying cry, inspiring countless others to step up in defense of the vulnerable. In the months that followed, Emma's presence at Angel's Haven continued to illuminate lives. She hosted workshops explaining how simple acts of human kindness could be catalysts for larger systemic change. She became a trusted confidant for those scarred by abuse and neglect, reminding them that even in the darkest moments, there existed a promise of redemption in the simplest human connections. And all the while, the drawing remained close to her heart, a symbol of the bond formed long ago in a humble cafe, a bond that had grown stronger, unseen by most but infinitely significant. Late one quiet evening, as Emma prepared to close the center for the night, she found a small bulletin board near the entrance adorned with thank you notes, stories of healing, and triumphs over adversity. Amid the tapestry of words and images, one message stood out, the very drawing she had received, now displayed with care. Underneath it, handwritten in bold letters, read, "Your kindness saved me. You are my angel." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she realized that sometimes, the goodness one sows returns in ways that transcend expectations. The streetlights flickered outside as she turned off the remaining lights, a hushed promise of another day filled with hope. In that moment, Emma understood that her journey was far from over. The quiet, selfless act that had once seemed like a small drop in the vast desert of life had grown into an enduring river of change. The child whose silent gratitude had reached out to her now represented all those who had found solace and strength in small, compassionate gestures. With renewed purpose and a heart brimming with love, Emma embraced her new role, not merely as a waitress who fed a hungry child, but as a guardian of hope, a steadfast reminder that even in a world that sometimes turns a blind eye, kindness will always find a way to return, transforming lives and igniting a legacy of compassion. Subscribe if you believe that your kindness, however simple it may seem, can change someone's world, and that, even after years, love continues to light the way home.